I would like to welcome you to the session now, Green Hydrogen from the Sea. I hope you can hear me. I'm excited that we have really interesting experts here on the panel. And as the first point, I would like to introduce myself a little bit. My name is Martin Skiba. I'm now working since 20 years in the offshore wind industry, exclusively in the offshore wind industry. And I'm here in my role as a board member from the BWO. I would like to introduce also the panelists a little bit. We do have 4 panelists today for our session. And I'm starting with Miklós Gáspár. Welcome to this session. Miklós is team leader at the DG Energy, especially in the unit for infrastructure and regional cooperation within the DG Energy from the European Union. And he worked also a lot for projects of common interest, PCIs, in the field of energy. So I'm very happy that you join our session here, Miklós, because we have to speak definitely about the European strategy about green hydrogen from the sea, of course. So, and then secondly, we have Tim Bruns. We know each other very well. He's a former employee of BWO. But I think since 1 year, Tim, is this right? 1 year, especially exactly 1 year, he is working for the association Open Grid Europe, and Open Grid Europe might be better known in the past as E.ON Gas Transport. It is the very big association because they are operating a pipeline network of around 12,000 kilometers with natural gas currently, of course, and they would like to change this in the future. Tim is managing, he is heading the office in Berlin. So he is well aware about all regulatory frameworks regarding hydrogen now, or let's say the dynamics today, the dynamical activities in the field of regulatory frameworks. And then we have Poul Skjærbæk. Hello, Poul.
Hello.
Poul is from Siemens Gamesa. And he is the Chief Innovation and Product Officer for the Service Business Unit in Siemens Gamesa. He called himself also as a Power-to-X pioneer, I am informed, driving the energy transition through innovative solutions. And innovative solutions are really requested here. And I'm really excited to speak with you also about the different technologies which we can apply to produce green hydrogen with the help of our wind. And then we do have Dr. Carola Kantz. She is the Deputy Director Power-to-X for applications within the huge German association VDMA. I think it's one of the biggest associations, well known. We will speak with her, of course, about the position paper or the 5 key principles that VDMA developed together with a lot of other associations last year. And then we come to the first round of questions. It's a sort of sofa talk for all the participants who dialed in now. You can always ask a question in the chat. Yeah, I will try to follow the chat a little bit, and it should be a lively debate. Yeah, we have 40 minutes now time to run this debate. As a first question, maybe to Miklós, we know all that the European Union came up last year with the European strategy for hydrogen. Yeah? It would be great if you could introduce us a little bit to this strategy. I saw that the latest decisions have been made last month in May from the European Parliament with a resolution again about the European strategy. I personally feel a little bit confused about the major topics that the European strategy is consisting of. Maybe you give us first a short introduction about these major topics.
Yeah, with pleasure. So good morning to everybody, all the panelists and all the participants in this event. Thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to this discussion. So yeah, perhaps by way of introduction, share on the Commission's vision for this for a hydrogen economy. So last year in July, the Commission adopted two strategies, one on energy system integration and one on hydrogen. And these two strategies draw up a strategic vision of how the future energy system should look like and what are the key elements and challenges that need to be taken into account here. And here our objective is threefold: to have a more circular energy system with energy efficiency at its core, so simply put, to consume less energy to begin with, to accelerate direct electrification, as electricity already is produced to a very significant extent through renewables, and this should increase very rapidly in the decades to come. And thirdly, to promote the use of renewable and low carbon fuels, including hydrogen among those low carbon fuels for sectors that are hard to decarbonize. And all of this is, of course, against the background of reaching climate neutrality by 2050, in line with the Green Deal that this Commission has formulated as a major initiative at the start of its mandate. So what role particularly for hydrogen, and why hydrogen? I mean, hydrogen is enjoying great attention in Europe and around the world. It is certainly a promising technology, and I mean, I think generally speaking, the background is that direct electrification has its limits. I mean, our the impact assessment that the Commission has performed for its climate target plan recently counts with various possible direct electrification rates in the final energy consumption, but in none of them it exceeds 50%. So this means that the rest of the energy mix will have to be filled by using other fuels in gaseous or liquid or solid form. And these fuels are currently, of course, of fossil origin typically, but in the future they will have to be either renewable or decarbonized in order to help Europe meet the decarbonization objectives. Now, hydrogen is definitely one of such fuels, and I mean, there are many production technologies. Hydrogen, of course, today is produced typically from fossil natural gas, but I mean, there are many production technologies to reduce the carbon footprint of hydrogen, and most importantly, when we use renewable electricity as input to produce hydrogen through water electrolysis, then the resulting hydrogen is renewable and it has practically a zero life cycle greenhouse gas footprint. I think because of this event, I mean, offshore wind definitely is a very promising source to produce green hydrogen for several reasons. It is a renewable resource that is abundant in Europe. I mean, the Commission also adopted last year an ambitious strategy to roll out offshore wind and to scale it up from 12 gigawatt today to as much as 300 gigawatt by 2050. It is a major technology with falling costs, and it offers a solution to transport the renewable energy that is produced in the form of hydrogen. So this solution can help overcome grid bottlenecks in the electricity sector, for instance. So it is definitely something which is very promising. And on the end-use sector, hydrogen is a versatile fuel. It can be used as fuel either directly, or it can be a basis for synthetic fuels. it can be used as feedstock, it can be used for storage, and it has many possible applications in several industry sectors, transport, I mean, for instance, in chemicals or steel making, aviation. And that's what makes it essential, an essential part of the puzzle to reach our commitment, our decarbonization commitment. Another thing that I should stress here is that I think we in the European Commission also see this as a key part, a key element in an industrial policy. So this is investment in a future technology, investment in growth, where Europe has a highly competitive industry sector. And so therefore, investing in hydrogen can foster a sustainable growth and job strategy. It can help us recover from the COVID-19 crisis. In the hydrogen strategy, we put forward some estimations for investments, and these show, I mean, really the magnitude of the investments that should and can be mobilized through this. We estimate here in the hydrogen strategy that there would be a need to invest 200 to 340 billion euros in renewable power generation, 20 to 40 billion in electrolyzers, and 65 billion in hydrogen infrastructure to reach the objectives that were formulated in this hydrogen strategy. And indeed, I mean, the hydrogen strategy formulates quite ambitious objectives to roll out 6 gigawatt of electrolyzers by 2030 and 40 gigawatt by 2040. All this to ensure green hydrogen supply to industry and increasingly to new users. The hydrogen strategy draws up a vision of kind of a staged or a gradual deployment of a hydrogen-based economy, and this will, of course, not happen overnight. But I mean, at the beginning already, it will probably focus in the sectors which already use hydrogen today, and to offer an alternative to those sectors to reduce their carbon footprint. And increasingly, as the investments grow and as the economic case for hydrogen grows, it can then spread to other sectors and play a key role in the midterm in reaching our decarbonization objectives. So that's what I would say by way of introduction.
Great, Miklós. Thank you very much. I wrote already 10 questions on my paper, but it's not up to me to ask all the questions now. I would like to ask Carola about her 5 points, her 5 really important topics on the roadmap to introduce hydrogen in the market, which you have developed with 13 other associations last year to make hydrogen a successful story. Could you sum up this point also a little bit? And maybe you can also explain how this are in relation to the European strategy of hydrogen, of course.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here in that very interesting talk. So I represent the value chain of hydrogen and more broadly Power-to-X, from renewable energy manufacturers to process engineering to manufacturers in all application, in all industry, societal sectors, industry, mobility, heating and energy. So we look at it at a quite broad perspective, and as you said, VDMA itself is a quite big organization. We are very export-oriented, not only in Europe but worldwide. So we also have a more global view of the things. And what I completely agree with is that hydrogen is a very important energy carrier for climate neutrality. It's very versatile. It can be stored. It can be a gas. It can be transformed in liquids, and it enables us to really unleash the renewable potential where we have it, not only in Europe but also across the world. Now we have formulated a couple of principles, and I don't want to go into all the 5 of them, but just to emphasize the most important of them, to monitor the hydrogen strategy. And we think the 2 times 40 gigawatt goal is a very ambitious one. The 6 gigawatt in 2024 will be also a very ambitious one. 24 is around the corner; it's tomorrow. So we will. I'm quite curious to see what the Hydrogen Forum will present. I think it's tomorrow and on Friday. But we will really need to gain more speed on that. So we think it's ambitious in terms of achieving economies of scale by the time we have the 6 and the 2 times 40 gigawatt capacity. So for the electrolyzer manufacturing sector, this is important to get into the economies of scale, to reduce the capex. What we would have liked to see a bit more in the hydrogen strategy is the focus on carbon performance first, not really the energy efficiency first. I'm not against energy efficiency. I've represented energy efficiency manufacturers or instruments for a long time. I'm not against energy efficiency, but what we really need to look at into how we really reduce the carbon, and not steering energy carriers into certain sectors where we think in our offices it's more useful, and steering technologies into the applications where we think it's more useful. Let the market do that. What we as the electrolyzer manufacturers want to become is we want to become competitive. We very much believe in these technologies. We think that this will be something we need on a global scale. So we want to become competitive because we want to lead that technology, not only in Europe, but worldwide. And we all know what happened to the PV industry in Germany. We were very good in that, but we were subsidized. And no, we're not really good anymore in that. And we don't want to repeat that. So focus on those markets where there is where there are actually business cases, where the business cases are the closest. We know we need hydrogen in steel. We know we need it in aviation. And those sectors will get it. That's not the issue. But if, for the market ramp up, we can use e-fuels in the road sector, and the road sector has a willingness to pay, why not use it there? And the value chains are overlapping. So steel and aviation will profit from reducing costs. So this is one really big thing we would like to, we were consistently putting forward. Concentrate on markets, not only on subsidies. And the second thing is what we think it's important, and I think there are now also within industry strategy in the European Commission, this notion is getting more traction, that we need to have the global view. Obviously in Germany and especially in Europe, we have a lot of good locations to produce hydrogen. But when we think about the quantities we will need for steel, for aviation, for maritime, we will need to untap the global markets. In that, we also think we need to have, European Union as one of the leaders to negotiate partnerships with possible producer countries. I probably should stop here to have a debate with the others.
Thank you very much. I received already the first questions in the chat. And I will definitely would like to come back to these questions, but maybe first give the other panelists the first opportunity to speak. And Tim, we just heard about the carbon performance first, which is of course very important. I think you are lobbying for a huge infrastructure which is already in place for your natural gas, to use this huge infrastructure for hydrogen. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? And I guess this is not only related to European countries in the European Union. The gas network is really, really huge. So we speak then also about import and export, I guess.
Thank you. I work for OGE, which is Germany's largest gas TSO, and as Martin has put it at the introduction, we are now transporting 100% natural gas, but as the energy transformation goes, That needs to change, and we want to change that. And one plan that we have introduced together with our European colleagues, other European gas TSOs, is called the European Hydrogen Backbone. Today, it's an open initiative that plans to build an integrated H2 grid for all of Europe. And important to say here that it is on the TSO level, not the DSO level, and that we are looking to transport 100% hydrogen. So blending is not an option in the European hydrogen backbone. We first published our ideas in July of 2020, together with 11 other TSOs or 10 other TSOs plus us in 10 countries. And we have since updated the European hydrogen backbone to 23 TSOs, now in 21 European countries. We want to build, as I said, an integrated hydrogen network in Europe, which is 70% based on existing natural gas lines. So the need for actually building new infrastructure remains quite low. In its first phase, the European hydrogen backbone would span around 12,000 kilometers, mostly in Germany, the Netherlands, some pipelines in Spain, but mostly northwestern Europe, as we believe these will be the first parts where hydrogen will play a significant role, especially in the industrial sector. And it will connect what the European strategy on hydrogen calls hydrogen valleys, so areas or regions where hydrogen is used. In the second phase, up to 2040, then our plan is to grow the grid to about 40,000 kilometers, then spanning from Sweden all the way down to southern Italy and from Spain to Poland. So connecting all of Europe, but Martin, as you have said, also connecting to our closest international neighbors, and that being North Africa. Unfortunately, the UK is now an outer European neighbor, so also the North Sea, which is especially interesting to offshore wind, of course, and eastern parts of Eastern Europe. There is a wide range of cost estimates that we have made, ranging from 40 to 80 billion. That is due to the fact that it is very hard to estimate the exact cost for compression of hydrogen at this point. However, if you just go with a kind of like the median point of this cost estimate, it would mean that we can transport hydrogen for about 16 cents per kilogram for a distance of 1,000 kilometers. Or I think people from the electricity world are more used to dealing with kilowatt hours. So that's about half a cent per kilowatt hours per 1,000 kilometers. Again, it's an open initiative that we want to develop further, also with a view to 2050. But the 2040 idea could take the 40 plus 40 gigawatt electrolysis that we spoke so much about in the European strategy. This grid would be able to transport the supply of hydrogen that we have at this point in the EU. I think generally, as a German TSO, we are all for using all the potential that we have in Europe to produce green hydrogen. But what is very important to stress is that any production of green hydrogen will need a significant ramp up of renewable energies on this continent. And sometimes, well, it seems like our ambition doesn't really follow what we then actually turn into reality. And therefore, I couldn't agree more with Carola Kantz to say that international markets will be very important as well.
Maybe a short question again to you, Tim, because only 4 days ago, the German government signed an agreement with Australia about, it was more a letter of intent, a bilateral alliance on hydrogen production. What do you think about this? I mean, you don't have any kind of possibilities. Pipeline to Australia is far too long. How does your price that you have mentioned compared with hydrogen from Australia?
No, yeah, absolutely not. I don't think anyone would ever want to build a pipeline from Australia to here. Well, I think generally the idea of the German government in this H2 Global project, I think that's what it is to kind of start first cooperations internationally that can then be built upon in the future. I don't see these agreements producing large amounts of hydrogen that will be needed in short time in the European industry in the near future, but it's more something that will be kind of built upon gradually. And to be honest, we are pipeline experts. I don't know what the cost of transporting hydrogen through a ship carrier from Australia to Germany would be. The only answer I could give is that, as within everything, economies of scale matter. So you need to start at some point and then grow the market. And then hopefully it will become more competitive.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Yeah, Paul, you heard all the ambitious targets from the European Union, 40 gigawatt until 2040, 6 gigawatt until 2030, and so on and so forth. From my knowledge, please correct me, and it would be interesting to hear more about from you. Electrolyzer are today operating in the range of, I don't know, 10 megawatt, 20 megawatt, or something like this. So, my background is also mechanical engineering. So I would like to ask you, what kind of challenges do you see on the way forward in terms of technology? Is it really possible to have to meet these targets? How long will it take to develop the technology? Everybody is saying, of course, we do this 100 years, and that's nothing new. Of course, it's not new, but we have to scale it up and so on and so forth. I really would like to hear from you more about the different technologies and are they able to meet those targets?
Yeah, and maybe I should just rewind a little bit. We actually looked for this for a couple of years now, and like Carola said, the amounts needed will be huge. So at least our conclusion is that we really somehow need to also get it right when it comes to how are we then going to do it, and is it pipeline or is it electricity? We produce the energy to the end consumer, and at least our view on that is now that with the amounts of gas we would need here, we simply need to have an effective transmission asset. So that has kind of led to that we believe in order really to make this happen, we need to have the conversion as fast as possible, because it's simply not realistic to push these amounts of energy through the grids. You're absolutely right. I mean, electrolyzers exist. You can buy today up to a 20 megawatt module, and you can get a number of them. But just plugging them into the wall socket and do hydrogen will not really scale. So that is kind of our starting point, and that's also why we start to look at how can we make a smarter solution. And at least our conclusion is, if the end game is that you need a hydrogen, then let's get it converted as fast as possible and inject it into a gas network. And that's of course where it starts to make a lot of sense to plan this now, and we firmly believe that is needed, because we need somehow to balance the production to the end users, and the chance of co-locating that is fairly small in the big picture, because we will need to have transmission assets on this. So that has kind of led to we believe that fundamentally in the longer run, especially for offshore, the technology of choice is that we simply produce hydrogen and not electricity. So the turbines we want to put up in the future for offshore will not produce electricity, they will produce hydrogen, and we need a grid to kind of offtake that hydrogen. It's super scalable in our world. I mean, the infrastructure you need to build a pipe can support 10 to 20 gigawatts of offshore wind. If you have to do the same as electricity, it would be a massive installation. So in order really to bring this to scale, this is what we believe is the optimal setup. That being said, of course, it's not existing. I mean, there is no turbine producing pure hydrogen today, and we firmly believe that that can be done, and that's also why we launched a plan saying in the next 5 years we would actually bring the first turbine online that produces pure hydrogen. That being said, yes, you can make the first one, and the next question is, of course, how do we then scale it? And as I see it, there is a technology challenge to kind of make this work. I'm confident we will solve that. The next step is really how do we then make something that can be scaled to a gigawatt level, and that's one of the things we're looking into, where we really would like to have a modular setup where we can more or less leverage on the way we install offshore wind farms today. We just need to add some modules. So if you see drawings of what we're doing, it's all containerized. It's all things you can mass manufacture at a low cost place. And then you can you ship it directly offshore with the technologies and installation methods we know today. So, but it'll take a bit of time to get running.
What kind of steps, Paul, will be needed to this vision of a 1 gigawatt offshore wind farm, let's say, producing hydrogen offshore and transporting it with a pipeline or with vessels to the shore? What kind of smaller steps do you need to develop the technology?
I think we need to see a sequence of initiatives. I think we need to, of course, get the first demonstrators on the generation technology, which would be the turbines, including with the electrolyzers. Then we somehow need to see the first places where we can do this at a certain scale. As I would like to see, we build a couple of turbines, then maybe a few hundred megawatts, and then we go to the gigawatt scale. And we somehow need a plan for this, because the economy comes with the scale of this. Financially very attractive if you only build a couple of hundred megawatts, but we somehow need to get that started and to demonstrate that this works. So we really need over the next 10 years to see the first demonstrators for the generation to come. Then we need to see the build out of the first, you could say, infrastructure projects where we can then scale it up, and ideally you would of course build the big pipeline so you're ready just to add on additional wind farm modules. Because it makes no sense to build a transmission asset for a couple of hundred megawatts. We should build it for 10 gigawatts, but obviously it'll take some time before you utilize that asset. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to go to the chat a little bit, and there are couple of questions from the audience. The first one, Miklós, I think you are the right guy to answer this. How does the EU plan to ensure the competitiveness of green hydrogen compared to blue hydrogen? Is a question from Jenny Winkler. Miklós, how can you ensure this?
Yeah, thanks for this question. Thanks for giving me the floor again. So in the hydrogen strategy, the Commission then outlined this vision to have green hydrogen and renewable hydrogen as a key part of the energy mix in the future, and that this will help decarbonization. This obviously requires addressing a number of challenges. And in general, what is needed to roll out green hydrogen is to have a supportive policy framework both on the supply side and infrastructure. And over the past year and this year, the Commission has presented a number of initiatives, legislative initiatives and it is working on further ones in the coming months to address the different pieces of this puzzle. Right now, the Commission is working for the Fit for 55 package, which will include the revision of the Renewables Energy Directive. And one of the issues that will be tackled, that will be looked into in this regard, is issues related to the certification, to the guarantees of origins, to definitions, quotas regarding green hydrogen. So these are the issues which are topics here. Then towards the end of the year, we expect to come up with a legislative package to have a market framework and market rules for gas and green hydrogen, well, gas and hydrogen in general, where the objective is to have another look at the internal energy market rules and to see how they can be adapted to support the deployment and the rollout of renewable gases. I mean, today the gas market is essentially, it essentially means natural gas. There is some biomethane, and there is hardly any hydrogen. And in the future, as this will change, there are a number of regulatory challenges that need to be addressed. I mean, with regard to hydrogen, such questions include, of course, the access to infrastructure, rules on capacity, rules on planning, and so on. And these are all, I mean, it's kind of early days in a way, because we have had the public consultation. We have stakeholder fora, so it's a very open process still, where colleagues who in the neighboring unit are drafting the impact assessment are looking at various options. And I think in this regard, all the input from stakeholders and various spectrum of the stakeholders is most welcome. And I should also mention then the core business of our unit. What we do where I work is the 10E framework, the framework for trans-European energy networks, where we recently revised the regulation. We presented a legislative proposal, and notably the objective here is to update this framework to support the rollout of cross-border infrastructure, so EU-level cross-border infrastructure that is needed for decarbonization. And what it means with regard to gas is that we decided to end policy support for natural gas infrastructure and instead to refocus the framework entirely on renewable and low carbon gases. Specifically for hydrogen, we have drawn up a vision which is quite in line with what Tim outlined for the European hydrogen backbone, an interconnected EU network which can serve to connect supply and demand locations across Europe by offering a cost-effective transport option for dedicated to hydrogen. And here, of course, it is important to note that it's not necessarily only new assets that have to be built, but that actually this transition can happen in a cost-effective way by capitalizing on the existing natural gas asset base and making investments which repurpose existing pipelines, other natural gas assets to the use for hydrogen. Carola and others also mentioned the importance of imports. I think indeed there is big potential in Europe to produce green hydrogen, but I mean, a lot of the stakeholders are saying, well, this will not be enough and imports will be needed. In the end, I mean, this is not really markets will then determine this. But for instance, in the 10E regulation, what we try to do is to also open up this framework for projects that invest in terminals, in port hubs in Europe, to equip them with the capability to receive hydrogen in liquid form or hydrogen embedded in organic substances, with a view to then inject them into the grid and transport them to where they are consumed. And I should also mention, perhaps as a last brief remark, the taxonomy regulation, which is recently presented. I mean, it's not yet in force, but there we seek to create a framework for private sector investment, to guide private sector investment into sustainable solutions. And here as well, there are definitions to what should qualify as low carbon, so as hydrogen production that is compatible with the carbon neutrality objective, and also what kind of gas and power network investments should be recognized as sustainable. So there is a number of initiatives that are happening with the ultimate goal of helping the rollout of renewable hydrogen, renewable gases in general. Yeah, so I hope.
Okay, yeah, and that was already a lot of information. Maybe a short question, a little bit. When really, let's make it a little bit more concrete. When do you really expect price parity between green hydrogen and fossil-based hydrogen? When will it be, from your point of view? in 2030, in 2035. I'm asking because Siemens Gamesa came up with a paper only a week ago, and they are expecting that green hydrogen produced with offshore wind, price parity will be reached in 2035 already. What's your opinion, Miklós? Yeah, I know that it's not an official target, but what's your personal opinion about this?
Yes, well, I think I was going to say that having Poul on our panel is, I mean, makes him, I think, much more qualified to answer this question on when electricity-based hydrogen can be cost competitive. I mean, there are many obviously policy-related aspects here as well. I mean, what we can see is that blue hydrogen.
Only a short answer. Miklós.
Short answer. I don't know.
Short
that's the short answer. Yes. But hopefully as soon as possible, and yeah, okay. Definitely we're doing our bit to try to help achieve that.
Okay, thank you. So we have other questions from the audience. Will hydrogen be produced onshore or offshore? What is the long-term vision? I think, Paul, you already answered it a little bit. Your long-term vision is to produce it offshore, of course, or?
Yeah, I think, again, if you look at the amounts needed, at least if we want to produce in Europe, I don't think we'll find the space onshore, because we most likely need that for the direct electrification. So the good thing is we have actually quite a lot of space around where we could do it offshore.
Yeah, okay. And then the question from Jörg Budenberg, also I think that goes to the direction to you, Paul. I think you mentioned it before. Does produce the containers at a low-cost place in the world, this was a quote from you, Paul, before, mean that as in PV, China wins again?
Not necessarily, but I also think we need to realize that in order to make this competitive and get close to the grey hydrogen price, we need to be super sharp on cost of the equipment. But I see other means, and I mean the first actually big electrolyzer factories, they are being built in Europe. You see ITM, Siemens Energy, and a lot building them here. So not necessarily, but and it can also be most of it maybe can be automated. So it's not really the labor cost anymore that drives. So my point was more we need to have something standardized which we can produce in a cost-effective way. It can just as well be in Europe if we are smart enough, but obviously we need then to make sure we are not dependent on the high salaries here compared to others. But I think it's up to us, the industry, really, to make the most cost-effective setup. But cost do matter, especially for the electrolyzer, because in the long run we will be dependent on the capacity factor of the renewable source, and it will not come to 100. So we need to make sure we have the equipment at the right cost, else we will not get competitive.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I would like to come maybe now a little bit more to the situation which we are faced in Germany. And Tim, you mentioned it already. There's such a dynamic process in these days. It's unbelievable. Only 2 days ago, the German government, the Ministry of Economic Affairs, presented a new approach, a new subsidy approach, a CFD system for hydrogen based on a two-sided supply-demand auction. So you will run an auction at the supply side, you will run an auction on the demand side, and then the CFD mechanism will balance supply and demand. Yeah. Very interesting approach, and they founded a foundation now. It's only two days ago, this press release. I would like to ask all of you, I guess you have read it, what do you think about it? Is this a way forward for a reasonable market mechanism which can be applied also in a wider range of markets, or what do you think in general about this approach? So it's an open discussion now. Everybody can.
Carola, you're unmuted, so you can go first.
Thank you very much. Yes, the H2 Global. We at VDMA actually supported that quite much. Although I know it's a very complex concept. Obviously, with the two sets of carbon price for difference, what it mainly does is it wants to try to give investor security both for countries producing renewable hydrogen, let's say in North Africa or the Middle East or Australia, and then giving investor security for those markets in Germany, but also in Europe, to use that hydrogen by having a higher CO2 price and by being able to receive a subsidy for the difference of the CO2 price. So essentially what it is, it's an OPEX funding.
Yes.
As I said, it's quite complex. I think this is still in the making. The foundation has been founded now. We have, I believe, 16 companies and associations, or more companies that are supporting the foundation. And now it's up to really make the hydrogen partnerships and really being able to initiate a global market on hydrogen. So I think with the carbon prices for difference, I think there are still many things that have to be solved. When you look at Germany, especially the Ministry for Environment, there will be a pilot program on CCFDs most likely in the next year. There's a policy paper now outlining some points, but it's still at a very superficial level. So we really need to know more about how these carbon contracts for difference will evolve. And obviously also in a way in this multi-level governance state, this is a new subsidy mechanism. It's only a pilot scheme. We have the state aid on the European level, where I saw that carbon contracts for difference are included as well. But yeah, we need a little bit more details on how that evolves. But in theory, I think it's a very good concept. Just let me make one thing clear. When we import hydrogen from, let's say, Australia or Chile, I don't think it will be hydrogen in itself. It will be a transformed form of hydrogen. It will be liquefied. It can be a form of zinc crude, and that you can actually transport with this existing technology. And I think this is really an important point. We will have hydrogen production places in Europe where you produce hydrogen, where the hydrogen that you need as hydrogen. But then we have other production sites where we produce a different form of energy based on renewable hydrogen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carola. We are already at the end of this session. That's really a pity. As far as I know, we had only 45 minutes, so we have already 2 minutes longer. So sorry for that. I think we could speak the next hour or 2 hours about this, because this is such a variety of topics. I hope we have faced some interesting points. A last question to everybody of you, and that's a little bit to test your knowledge also about hydrogen. That's a question which came in my mind. If you look to 2030, so it's only 9 years from now, and if you look to green hydrogen produced with offshore wind turbines, in the European Union, what do you think? How many gigawatts will we have? It's a sort of bet, and I would like to run this session again in 2035 in case I'm still living.
I think the best teacher here is always the past. And if you look back 10 years into the offshore wind history in general, the debate then was affordability, not how can we unleash its potential. So I think 10 years from now, the same issue will probably be when we look at offshore wind and hydrogen in combination. So I think now everyone says, yeah, it's a nice idea, but it's a little bit too expensive. In 10 years, we will see that it will have scaled and will be put to good use in Europe.
Yeah, but this is not an answer on my question. You don't have to answer now in a diplomatic way. I would like to get a figure, which I can write on my paper.
A price or a...
No, in gigawatts, power, let's say power, how many gigawatts of wind turbines offshore in the European Union will be installed to produce hydrogen?
1.5.
Okay, Noted. Miklós, what do you think? No diplomatic answer, please.
Well, I mean, I really don't want to get into this type of guesswork.
Okay.
I mean, it's not weird. Yeah.
Expected this answer. So, Carola?
I won't give an exact, but it will be. I think it will be more than 1.5. I hope it will be more than 1.5.
Okay, Paul?
I would say if we have done somewhere between 3 and 5 gigawatt, we have done a really good job. So that would be my ambition level.
That's good. I wrote this on this paper, and I hope we can repeat this session in 2030. I will ask you again. I hope we still are running the conferences from BWO, and then we will run the same session. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you everybody who participated in this session, and have a nice day and a good week.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.